Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. Tonight we present another in our series of interviews to mark the first anniversary of the Modi government. My guest today is a former Congress minister. He was Minister for Human Resource Development, Law, as well as Communications, Kapil Sibal. Mr. Sibal, a survey published by the Sunday Times says that in fact 66% of the Indian people believe the Modi government's performance is either good or very good. Would you accept that after a year in office, that is a significant popular endorsement?
Well, I don't know what the survey said and what it didn't say. But this, if you really reflect on this government in the last 1 year, I would say that apart from the fact that government is a continuum and something incrementally keeps on happening, but of the promises that Modi made before he came to power, I think there's hardly any one promise that he has fulfilled. The economy is in terrible shape at the moment. The agricultural sector is growing at 1%. Education and healthcare, there are matters which touch every citizen of this country, are in the decline. And the justice system, litigants in this country are still looking for justice for all.
So in your broad assessment of the Modi government at the end of 1 year, two things. One, that he hasn't delivered on his promises. And secondly, that critical sectors are in decline?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we are in a crisis at the moment.
When you say crisis, what sort of crisis do you mean?
Well, we have an agricultural crisis at hand. There are no jobs that are being created in the market.
Much of the agricultural crisis surely is a result of unfortunate rains which are beyond his control, a bad monsoon that's been predicted, which again he cannot control.
No, that's not the only reason. That's not the only reason. See, agricultural labor over the years has increased. Arable land has gone down. People are committing suicides partly because of the fact, but the 52% of households, agricultural households in India, are under an average debt of 46,000 rupees.
Absolutely, but surely this
52, and kindly see, and not only that, the debt is to money lenders.
But the solution is therefore to find alternative livelihood, to take people off the farms where you cannot have a good living, because farms are shrinking, the pressure of people is growing, and to give them alternate land acquisition is one way to do that, but your party opposes it.
That's the other. It's a very dangerous way of moving forward, because 75% of agriculturists in India hold less than 1 hectare of land.
Which is why, in fact, they can't make a livelihood out of agriculture.
Exactly, and if you take away that land, you take away everything.
Well, no, actually, if you take away that land and create jobs instead, you give them new livelihood, you give them new openings, you give them a life, surely.
Karan, what kind of jobs? They will not get absorbed in the sector because they have no skills.
Let's come back to the Modi government. Let's go through the Modi government step by step, and let me begin by putting to you the 3 ministries, in a sense, that you looked after when you were in power in the days of the UP. And let's start with communication. Ravi Shankar Prasad, your successor, is extremely proud of the 1.09 lakh that he's earned through spectrum auctions. And he says, I'm quoting, "It's the highest in the history of Indian telecom." He adds, "I would like to say one thing to my esteemed predecessor who talked about zero loss, that if they would have done what I have done, they would have got the same
Well,
result."
He forgets that the 3G auction went for over 1 lakh as well. He doesn't remember that.
Except
and remember,
considerable component was BSNL and MTNL, which surely the government can't take us out.
Let me just respond to that. And I think we need to ask that question of ourselves. Is the purpose of auctions in a sector like telecom or coal for the government to earn money, or for service to be provided to people? You may have earned 1 lakh crore, but when I ride from my house to the Supreme Court, my call drops 4 times.
You're linking the two together?
Oh, absolutely. Because, if
you're actually saying auctions have resulted in a poorer quality of service?
Naturally, because there is no surplus left for capital to be invested in infrastructure. Everything has been given to government. Remember, these companies, when they participate in the auction, take loans from banks and pay to the government, and then they have no capital left in investing in infrastructure.
Let me put the answer that Ravi Shankar Prasad would give to that, because he's given it in interviews many times over. He says that the overall debt of telecom companies may have gone up to 3.5 lakh crore. However, only 28,870 crore of the new 1 lakh is payable up front. The rest is payable over 12 years.
Yes.
The yearly load is just 5,300, and the cost per minute per call is just 1.3 paisa.
That's absolutely right, but the fact of the matter is that's not enough for companies to make profit and invest back in infrastructure. They need to make profit to invest back. This is true of telecom, this is true of coal. The coal, they say they earn 2 lakh crores, but what they actually earn at the first year is 6,000 crores. But Modi, over a 30-year period, says we've earned 2 lakh crores in Canada.
I'm coming back to telecom. You're saying on telecom, the policy that Ravi Shankar Prasad has followed has ensured, A, that the quality of service has deteriorated because companies don't have money to invest in infrastructure. But what about the fact that the government has earned 28,000 this year? It will earn an additional 5,000 every year for the next 12 years, which gives the government money to put into infrastructure, to put into health, to put into education.
Yes, and what has happened to health and infrastructure? Infrastructure projects are lying wasted. Lakhs of crores of projects are lying wasted. As far as health sector is concerned, the allocations have gone down. Education sector, the allocations have gone down. So what are they putting into all these sectors?
So you're saying to me that not only has the actual telecom sector itself suffered, which is why calls are dropping, but the money they're earning is not being put into productive use either.
Absolutely.
What then do you think is happening to the 28,000 they've earned this year and the 5,300 they'll earn every year for 12 years?
For example, NOFN is a scheme that I started, which they call now Digital India. I got them 20,000 crores to lay down the digital network. Now, hopefully, they will use that money to invest in that NOFN because you need more than 20,000 crores. So the scheme that I started will actually be fructified if they actually put in that extra money.
But then you're answering the question you raised yourself. If the money that they're getting from the telecom sales are going to be used for Digital India, then it's being used usefully.
But the point is, at the same time, there's not enough investment by the private sector in infrastructure because the private sector has paid all the money to government.
And you're now saying that the private sector hasn't got the means to invest because of the cost of the auction.
So you may have a digital network, but you will not have the private sector investing.
So you're saying what they've gained on one hand, they've lost on the other.
Exactly.
Except for the fact that if actually the companies were to take the risk and put money in, they would find that they would get the growth they want and they would get the returns they need.
They won't take the risk because they don't want enough money to pay back the bank. First, that's why the sectors have gone sick. This is the reason why all these sectors have gone sick.
So you're saying to me, if I understand correctly, that Ravi Shankar Prasad's auctions have actually dug a hole for the telecom sector, and slowly the entire industry will sink down that hole.
And see what has happened to BSNL and MTNL.
And you're saying the same will happen to Airtel and Vodafone.
Absolutely.
So you see a very bleak future for the telecom industry, which was at one point a sunrise industry.
At the moment now, Airtel is borrowing from Chinese banks because they can't borrow from Indian banks.
Well, that's for a new venture they're setting up in China. Don't mix the two up.
Whatever it is, they don't have money to borrow now to invest in infrastructure.
It's an intelligent thing for them to do, to borrow from the Chinese banks, because they're setting up an operation in China.
Because the cost of interest is too high in India. That's another issue.
That is not Ravi Shankar's fault.
I'm not saying it's Ravi Shankar's fault. It's the entire banking structure which is in bad shape today.
Your view of the handling of the telecom sector under Ravi Shankar Prasad and Mr. Modi is that they've dug a hole for the industry, and what used to be a sunrise industry will now sink through that hole.
What should be happening is that industry should be given enough money to allow to invest in infrastructure at the upfront. And when the industry prospers, the government should share in that profit. That's the kind of model that we need to move forward.
And auctioning has made that impossible.
That's right.
All right. Let's then come to a second ministry that you were in charge of in the UPA days. I'm talking of law. Now, the government has passed the National Judicial Appointments Commission. They've amended the Constitution, but the whole thing is at the moment being challenged in the Supreme Court. I want to ask you, do you agree with the character of the commission devised by the government, or do you think they A, made a mistake not giving primacy to the judiciary, and B, they made a second mistake by having two eminent persons rather than just one, which ensures that the judiciary may have parity, but they don't have primacy?
Well, Karan, let me answer this question a little differently. When Modi came to power, what he said in the manifesto was that we will ensure justice for all. See, the priority of this government ought to be the lower judiciary, reforms in the lower judiciary, cutting down costs, cutting down, improving efficiency. The lower judiciary must be paid better. Their infrastructure systems must be better. They must be digitized in a big way. Now, they are not concerned with the real problems existing in the legal system. And I think it's a big mistake.
Was it a mistake to focus on the NGAC?
Exactly. It's like their priorities are all wrong.
You mean they shouldn't have taken it up at all?
They shouldn't have taken it up at all. They should have actually dealt with issues that impact the lives of people who are litigants in this country.
Wasn't it a great concern in the Congress party as well, particularly when you were in power, but also outside power, that the way in which judges were appointing judges was a mistake? It was, in fact, a misreading of our Constitution, Karan, and it needed to be corrected.
You're absolutely right. I am against the collegium system myself, but I'm also against the manner in which they are moving forward, because this NGAC wants to take control of appointments of judges to the higher judiciary for the very reasons that you have mentioned. If two people dissent, you cannot get a recommendation through by the Judicial Appointments Commission.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying two very important things. First of all, you're saying they should have concentrated on correcting the problems with the lower judiciary.
Right.
NJAC, though important, shouldn't have been their first priority.
Exactly.
Secondly, in tackling NJAC, the way they've devised it is to give at best parity to the judiciary. They should have actually given supremacy.
Absolutely.
Two eminent persons is a mistake.
Absolutely.
I know this is an unfair question, but you're an eminent lawyer. What do you think will be the outcome of the challenge to the NJAC?
Let the court decide that.
No, obviously. But what's your hunch? You must have a hunch.
No. I don't want to hunch my views on air at the moment.
You don't want to air your views on this subject?
Yes.
All right, I'll accept that. But your overall feeling is, once again, they got their priorities in the law ministry wrong.
Absolutely.
NJAC should have been tackled later, and it should have been tackled with a different concept.
If you want to be an Aam Aadmi party, you must deal with issues of the Aam Aadmi. Litigants are crying
I'm
for
not sure they want to be an Aam Aadmi party. That was either your slogan or it was Arvind Kejriwal.
That's what they now say, because they borrowed all our slogans.
Okay.
That's what they are now saying.
Let's then come to a third ministry that you presided over in your days when you were in power, and that's the Human Resource Development Ministry. Now, Smriti Irani, I will concede, is probably one of the most controversial, certainly one of the most criticized ministers in the Modi government. She, however, says that she's being picked upon and she's being targeted. I want to ask you, what is your assessment of Smriti Irani? And do you believe she has a point when she says that she's continually picked upon? And I'm asking you here not to be just an opponent, but to be objective.
See, look, I don't want to comment on an individual in the government. I don't think it's fair of me. But look at the kinds of things that have been making news in this country. Shiv Gaonkar resigned for reasons that we all know. And he didn't take back his resignation. Kakotkar had a tiff in the IIT Council. They want to remove the Vice Chancellor, or they were attempting to remove the Vice Chancellor. These are the kinds of Delhi.
And then there's the Sanskrit problem.
There's the Sanskrit problem. Then there is the issue of they want to revise all that has been done in the past. Then there is the issue of saffronization. They've got Mr. Batra in, right? Then
there's also the Council of Historical Research.
Council of Historical Research.
So are you saying these are all errors of judgment, errors of handling that are attributable to Smriti Irani?
They are not errors of judgment. They are deliberate decisions to saffronize the entire education sector.
And do you hold Smriti Irani directly responsible?
I hold the government, Mr. Modi, directly responsible. Why should I hold Mr. Smriti Irani?
Because she's the minister in charge.
But he is the Prime Minister.
In other words, are you also saying that in fact she may sit on the chair, but he actually orders the things that are done?
This is the RSS agenda.
So she's a puppet for him.
I don't want to use those
You're
words.
suggesting it?
No, I'm not suggesting anything like that. I'm just blaming the government, and the person who has to take the blame is the Prime Minister.
All right, let's widen our discussion. Let's come at this point in time to an issue that many people believe is perhaps the greatest success of the Modi government. It's somewhat surprisingly deft and successful handling of foreign affairs. Even your former National Security Advisor, Shiv Shankar Menon, said to me in March that the Modi government's handling of foreign affairs was much more focused, much more vigorous, right, than that of the UPA. Would you concede that actually his handling of foreign affairs is a success?
Oh, well, give me one success.
I'll give you two.
Yes.
The relationship with two major powers like China and America has been transformed in the last 1 year, as well as the relationship with at least three of our neighbors, Sri Lanka, Nepal and Bangladesh. On all 5 counts, we have a better and we have a deeper and we have a more trusting relationship.
Let's take China. How is the relationship transformed? You go and announce there that we'll give you e-visas, where that should have been a point of leverage for you to negotiate on issues like staple.
You mean he missed a trick?
Absolutely. I think that was a big mistake.
What about the argument that this is a unilateral offer, you don't use everything to negotiate for leverage?
Your foreign secretary says this is not something that's going to happen. A few hours later, the Prime Minister makes an announcement. Obviously, that means that the ministry has not been fully consulted. Otherwise, the foreign secretary would have said that. Prime Minister are not supposed to, especially on important...
Are you saying that there were differences of opinion between the PM and the foreign secretary?
No, it's just... You see, Modi has been doing this throughout the last 5 years. He makes announcements. You see, Modi is like Houdini. You know, he makes you look at a world of make-believe. But the reality is far different.
Houdini was an escapologist. Modi isn't in a situation where he needs to escape from.
Maybe, but Houdini tried to show you a world of make-believe through his tricks. And this is what he does. He makes all kinds of statements, knowing full well that they cannot, he cannot honor them.
Let me put it
and then he tries to then pat himself on the back.
Houdini may be a beguiling comparison, but it's probably an inaccurate one, and I'll tell you why. Surely you have to give credit for the fact that swiftly and with great facility Mr. Modi has established a rapport, perhaps even a friendship, with a range of leaders like Xi Jinping and Barack Obama, Shinzo Abe and Tony Abbott, François Hollande and Stephen Harper.
Dr. Manmohan Singh had an equally warm relationship with all of them. In fact, they respected him perhaps.
Except that Modi began 2 years ago being a pariah.
You asked me what are the great achievements. Now we just started discussing China. Now nothing on stapled visas, nothing on Jammu and Kashmir, nothing on Pakistan, the way China is dealing with Pakistan. What is the deliverable that we've had in China? Let's talk of the United States.
A commitment to $20 billion of investment over 5 years from China, 30 from 35 from Japan.
Has that been delivered, or is it a promise? And let me tell you another thing about China. China has now today surplus capacity. China is growing at, probably will grow at less than 7% in years to come, because they've built huge infrastructure and there is huge capacities. China actually needs investment, and therefore Chinese companies in the telecom sector, they need India for that investment.
Mr. Modi is opening the door for them to come.
It's already open. The Chinese companies are already here. Now the question is whether that $20 billion will come or not. These are all agreements on paper. Even in Gujarat, it's only 14% of the promises.
So you're not impressed with the manner in which Mr. Modi has handled foreign affairs or the relationships he's established?
Karan, you said that there's a success. Success will have to come. It will have to be seen. At the moment, there is nothing that we can see.
Do you not think the nature of our relationship with countries like Bangladesh on our borders or America have transformed significantly?
What is the transformation? I want to know. What have the Americans done for us till date? What have the French done for us till date? What has the Russians done for us till date? Other than it's a continuum. We had very good relations with the US. That's continuing.
No, the American president for the first time in our 65-year history accepted an invitation to come to India. Narasimha Rao attempted it, as Krishnan Srinivasan revealed on this program, and was gently told, don't push it, Clinton will refuse.
I think we are being very short-sighted if you think that President Obama's coming here is a success of Modi's foreign policy, because success will only happen when actually American investment comes into India.
Let's then move beyond foreign policy to economic policy. Mr. Jaitley is enormously proud of the fact that he's brought down the fiscal deficit, inflation and the current account deficit fairly considerably. At the same time, growth has increased fairly sharply, and as he says, the world now takes India and views India very differently.
Let's look at...
And most people agree with Mr.
Karan,
Jaitley.
let's look at any sector of the economy, and I ask you to name that sector and let's discuss it, instead of these statements that Mr. Jaitley made. Let's talk of agriculture. What's the success in agriculture? The growth has come down from 3.7% to 1%. Is that a success? Let's talk of...
You're blaming that directly on the Jaitley handling of the economy?
You are telling me a success of... Let's talk of banking.
But those are cyclical things you're pointing out.
NPAs are the highest in the history of this country.
But again, that hasn't happened in 1 year, Mr. Modi.
Did I say it will happen? But he's not improved the economy. You're talking about his success in 1 year. I'm talking about the NPAs today. Today are 4,63,000 crores.
Growth this year will be 7.5%.
But growth will be. Incrementally, growth will be. We had 6.9% when we left, when people said it was less 4% or less than 5%. So growth, incremental growth will take place. Merely because Modi comes, the country doesn't come to a halt. Country has a momentum of its own, which will move forward.
So you're saying that, in fact, the fact that the CAD and the fiscal deficit and inflation are sharply down, or growth is considerably down.
What is inflation?
These are a continuum of the situation.
Karan, let's talk of inflation now. You know, the price of the cost of tur dal, mung dal is 20% higher. People can't afford the kind of the price of pulses today. Milk is higher, eggs are higher, vegetables are higher. The inflation is much more.
Mr. Modi had the courage to deregulate diesel. He's done it. He's allowed diesel prices to go up and down now, depending upon what happens to the market price of oil.
Karan,
he's pushed up investment, FDI.
Karan, let me pause.
In railways.
Pause. Let's talk of diesel. What was the price of crude oil when we left power? 108. What did it come down to? 43%.
So the benefit goes to market forces, not to
That's right. How does the benefit go to him? And what is the benefit given to the people? Only 14% of that. The rest of it he is hogged in his treasury. So what's this miracle that you're talking about? And let's talk of any other sector. Now, as I said, you talk of banking, you talk agriculture, you talk about the social sector.
Let's not go through sector by sector. You made a clear point. Let me put something else to you. Since you are so sharply, deeply critical of Mr. Jaitley's handling of the economy, let me ask you a different question. What is it that the Modi government should have done and didn't do?
Oh, they could have done a lot of things. For example, in agriculture. Actually, this attempt to invest less in the social sector. We, for example, get 70,000 crores and waived loans. This is social security for ordinary people. They should have thought of something like that. They should have had a crop insurance scheme in place by now, which they don't have. No, basically millions of these people are living marginally, and you need to give hope to their lives.
So the great failing in your eyes is his inability or his unwillingness, whichever it is, to tackle the crisis in agriculture.
Big failure. Number two, you know, the allocations for the tribal community has gone down by 46,000 crores. 46,000 crores. Allocation to Adivasis have gone down by 20,000 crores.
But that's because a lot of the money that went into those schemes is now going to the states, and the states have to put it in.
I'm sorry,
the total quantum could still go up even if the central allocation goes down.
It's nothing to do with it. Adivasis and tribal is nothing to do with the states. These are allocations of the budget. Gone down by 46,000 crores.
And you're saying to me that they're not compensated by the fact that the centre is giving more to the states?
No, not at all. Not at all. People are crying for justice.
That is the argument the government makes. You're saying you don't agree and you don't accept that argument.
I don't accept it at all.
What about very quickly things like Jan Dhan Yojana? What about the fact that they've taken up Aadhaar and they've deepened it and taken it further?
Of the 14
what
crores.
What about Swachh Bharat?
1 second. What is it? What is, has the world changed? Has India changed? Because Modi said it on the ramparts of Lal Killa? Is Bharat cleaner?
So you're saying that's
Bharat cleaner? Because these are all slogans.
What about Jan Dhan Yojana? What about the fact that you have...
What about Jan Dhan Yojana? 14 crores accounts,
Absolutely.
8 crores zero. 8 crore accounts have zero balance.
Yes, but the amount of money the other accounts have brought in has almost 10,000
I'm sorry,
crores.
You're wrong. 125 rupees have to be spent for each account which is not being operated. Multiply 125 into 8 crores, see how much money the government is wasting. Why don't you instead give money to the agriculturalist who is to the person who is committing suicide?
So you're saying to me,
why don't you transfer that money?
Just as you said a moment ago about foreign policy, you're saying about economic policy that it's been mishandled. Completely mishandled. They don't know what they are doing. They have no idea. This government is short on talent, and this government is short on sincerity. Sincerity?
Absolutely.
Are you accusing them of dishonesty?
Sincerity. They are not sincere about what they said.
In other words, they mislead people.
It is not Aapki Baar Modi Sarkar, it's Aapki Baar U-turn Sarkar. Every promise that they made, they've gone back on.
Let me come to one other area where Mr. Modi says, and probably public opinion this time agrees, that there is a big difference between your government and his, and that's to do with the perception of corruption and scandal. Whatever the truth may be, you know that you left office with a cloud of suspicion of corruption and scam. Till date, and it's been 1 year, there is no taint of corruption on the Modi government. That is a marked difference.
Karan, let me just... Corruption affects whom? We're talking about corruption in offices, in government offices, in the states, in the municipalities, in other government offices, whether it's education sector, in schools, in government schools. Has that corruption gone down?
But that is endemic in the Indian system. We're talking about corruption at the level of government and
the real corruption,
the big scams of lakhs of crores.
We can argue on that, but the real corruption that affects every resident in India.
You're saying it's untouched?
It's untouched.
So you're saying the corruption that matters to the people of India continues. It's the headline corruption that the press picks
that
up.
also is a perception.
But that is at least gone.
That's all right. But the point is the corruption that we face every day is still there, and it's rampant.
I'll accept the point you make that the corruption that the ordinary man faces in his life is rampant. But will you concede something? That the headline corruption that brought your government down has disappeared?
Look, Karan, that headline corruption had to do with 3 institutions. Okay? Starting from the CAG. And the media was a part of it. I would like to know that in the coal sector, what happened? What is the corruption that you're talking about? Individuals, if they are corrupt, they are being prosecuted. There will be individuals corrupt in this government as well.
So the corruption scandals that surrounded your government were a result of A, the CAG reports, which you believe are exaggerated, and B, the media.
That's right.
It's not reality, it was a perception, and you fell victim to that perception. It was a perception,
and I accept the fact,
My last question, and I'm running out of time. Many people say that one reason why the Modi government has seemed, and I'm using the word seemed so successful at the end of its first year, is that the opposition has been particularly weak. Rahul Gandhi has been particularly disappointing. Your failure as an opposition, and Rahul Gandhi's failure in particular as a leader, has boosted the standing of the government.
Karan, I don't know what the surveys say, but if you start talking to people on the ground, they'll tell you this guy has not delivered.
Who's this guy? Rahul Gandhi?
Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has not. Let's talk. Let's talk about the Prime Minister.
Okay.
We're talking about the Modi government. Rahul Gandhi has not delivered. He's more interested in non-resident Indians. He's least interested in resident Indians.
Unfortunately, you used Rahul Gandhi. You didn't mean it, but you used the word Rahul Gandhi. Correct yourself. You meant Narendra Modi.
No, Narendra Modi.
Okay. So the argument that a weak Congress is boosting Mr. Modi's standing is not one you buy.
No, Mr. Modi's image is being boosted by the same set of people who brought him to power.
All right.
Right? It's the media and his handling of the media, and I give him full credit for it. That's what's happening. But the reality on the ground is changing fast, and people know that he said something which he never meant.
All right, Kapil Sibal, let's leave it there. A pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. There are no jobs that are being created in the market.
Much of the agricultural crisis surely is a result of unfortunate rains which are beyond his control, a bad monsoon that's been predicted, which again he cannot control.
No, that's not the only reason. That's not the only reason. See, agricultural labor over the years has increased. Arable land has gone down. People are committing suicides partly because of the fact, but you know, the 52% of households, agricultural households in India, are under an average debt of 46,000 rupees.
Absolutely, but surely the
52, and kindly see, and not only that, the debt is to money lenders.
But the solution is therefore to find alternative livelihood, to take people off the farms where you cannot have a good living, because farms are shrinking, the pressure of people is growing, and to give them alternate land acquisition is one way to do that, but your party opposes it.
That's the other. It's a very dangerous way of moving forward, because 75% of, I would say that apart from the fact that government is a continuum and something incrementally keeps on happening, but of the promises that Modi made before he came to power, I think there's hardly any one promise that he has fulfilled. The economy is in terrible shape at the moment. The agricultural sector is growing at 1%. Education and healthcare, there are matters which touch every citizen of this country, are in the decline. And the justice system, litigants in this country are still looking for justice for all.
So in your broad assessment of the Modi government at the end of 1 year, two things. One, that he hasn't delivered on his promises, and secondly, that critical sectors are in decline?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we are in a crisis at the moment.
When you say crisis, what sort of crisis do you mean?
Well, we have an agricultural crisis at hand. Agriculturists in India hold less than 1 hectare of land.
Which is why, in fact, they can't make a livelihood out of agriculture.
Exactly, and if you take away that land, you take away everything.
Well, no, actually, if you take away that land and create jobs instead, you give them new livelihood, you give them new openings, you give them a life, surely.
Karan, what kind of jobs? They will not get absorbed in the sector because they have no skills.
Let's come back to the Modi government. Let's go through the Modi government step by step, and let me begin by putting to you the 3 ministries in a sense that you looked after when you were in power in the days of the UP. And let's start with communication. Ravi Shankar Prasad, your successor, is extremely proud of the 1.09 lakh that he's earned through spectrum auctions. And he says, I'm quoting, it's the highest in the history of Indian telecom. He adds, I would like to say one thing to my esteemed predecessor who talked about zero loss, that if they would have done what I have done, they would have got the same
Well,
result.
he forgets that the 3G auction went for over 1 lakh as well. He doesn't remember that.
And remember, considerable component was BSNL and MTNL, which surely the government can't take us out.
Let me just respond to that. And I think we need to ask that question of ourselves. Is the purpose of auctions in a sector like telecom or coal for the government to earn money or for service to be provided to people? You may have earned 1 lakh crore, but when I ride from my house to the Supreme Court, my call drops 4 times.
You're
So
linking the two together?
Oh, absolutely. Because, see, if
You're actually saying auctions have resulted in a poorer quality of service?
naturally, because there is no surplus left for capital to be invested in infrastructure. Everything has been given to government. Remember, these companies, when they participate in the auction, take loans from banks and pay.
Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. Tonight we present another in our series of interviews to mark the first anniversary of the Modi government. My guest today is a former Congress minister. He was Minister for Human Resource Development, Law, as well as Communications, Kapil Sibal. Mr. Sibal, a survey published by the Sunday Times says that in fact 66% of the Indian people believe the Modi government's performance is either good or very good. Would you accept that after a year in office, that is a significant popular endorsement?
Well, I don't know what the survey said and what it didn't say. But this, if you really reflect on this government in the last 1 year,